What's up, guys? Today, I'm going to show you exactly how I went from 40 pounds overweight, really shy, timid, not very athletic, to now having my dream physique of maintaining 10 to 12% body fat year round. I'm literally going to show you this in 3 steps. So who am I? I'm Dr. Dexu, former official UFC physical therapist. I've been training for 17 years. I'm this not super jacked Asian guy, not very jacked, but I made a ton of mistakes, and I want to just basically share with you all the mistakes that I made growing up and where I am today so that hopefully you don't make them. Today, I'm going to talk about all the misconceptions, everything that I hear on social media. I'm going to tell you stuff that you should probably try to avoid, and exactly how to stay lean year round to get from 40 pounds overweight to losing 40 pounds to actually maintaining and creating a system so that you can do this very effortlessly, even if you travel and go on vacations and stuff like that. I'm going to solve other questions around like what's the best way to actually lose fat, because I think that there's a lot of misconception around what's the best way to actually burn belly fat. Can you build your metabolism? So I really want to address all these things so that hopefully it just helps one person that watches this video. So step number one, how do you lose 40 pounds? Or for me specifically, how do you drop from 25% body fat to like 10% body fat? Well, the first step is you have to lose weight. Things didn't really like turn up for me until first year university, where I had a really bad injury. Right out of high school, there was like soccer scouts all over the place. And basically, first game of preseason, I was playing for university. Someone slid into my ankles and freaking broke my leg. Devastating. I didn't sign anything. And basically what happened was I lost my soccer scholarship because I was out for the whole season. And it made me feel really terrible. At the same time, I felt like there was a lot of things going against me. The girlfriend at the time ended up actually cheating on me for another guy. So I felt like I lost my identity in sports. And now this girl she left me for someone else. So I didn't feel valued. On top of that, a few months later, my dad passed away. He was like my best friend. He was the guy that literally was playing soccer with me, heading soccer balls with me. Like, man, he's a big part of my life. And I felt like there were so many things going against me at that time. So what did I do? I had two options. I can just, be sad, don't do anything, just play video games, or I can do something about it with my life. And the big reason why I want to do this was so that I can show to my ex that she was making a huge mistake. And so even though it came from a place of almost insecurity, it got me started. And so use that fuel, use the thing that happened, whatever happened, and freaking utilize that thing. Take action from that. So like once you have like the driving force and you understand why you want to do this, for other people, this is like literally the first step that we really do with our clients, is we really try to understand why they want to do this. A big part of what you're doing right now is a big behavior change. And so I hear this question all the time, Dex, I haven't found something that fits into my lifestyle. Okay, well, so if your lifestyle and you're diabetic and you're eating unhealthy, you stay up really late at night and you're just super tired all day, you're not there for your family and nothing fits into your lifestyle, well, maybe it's time for your lifestyle change. It's going to be the thing that's going to help you overcome things when things are hard. So if you're really clear on who you want to become, you want to be this role model, you want to be like this really fit person, you want to be this 2.0 version of yourself, that's like the first thing you really need to do, because even if you have like the perfect program, if you don't execute that program, you're not going to get results. So when you're super clear as to the person that you truly want to be, there's always room for improvements. There's always a better version of yourself. There's always an identity, this person that you could become. And so what is the road to get there? And asking yourself, what are the actions of that person? And you just continuously do those actions. But a big part of why people are successful, even when they finish the program, is because they basically become their 2.0 self. They become the person that they truly want to become. I'm going to be this person who's dependable, who's a role model, X, Y, Z. So doing the self-work is super important. And if some sort of thing happened where you have some sort of behavior change and you're like, you know what, this is it, I want to change my life, utilize that. So the first thing you really need to do is identify your caloric maintenance. So basically, this is how much calories you burn from just being alive. All you really need to do is kind of like a science experiment, find the number of calories that you burn per day, right? Eat that amount of calories for like 2 weeks, see whether or not you increase weight or decrease weight. And based off that number, you can start to decrease calories so that you can lose weight. So I'm gonna give you an example. How to do this? Yeah, literally pick a number, like 3,000 calories, and eat that for 14 days. Now, what you're gonna do is you're gonna weigh yourself for 14 days straight. Every single morning, close off so that you can identify the number of calories that you freaking burn. So if your weight stayed the exact same for 14 days, guess what your caloric maintenance is? 3,000 calories. That's taking into account how many steps you take, all these other factors. So you found out what that number is and it's specific to you. That's awesome. Okay, so now you know that if you ate 3,000 calories for 14 days, you did not gain weight, you did not lose weight. Guess what? If you want to lose weight, subtract 500 calories. If you subtract 500 calories from 3,000 calories, guess what? You're going to lose a pound a week. If you literally follow this formula, which is basically math, and you're tracking your calories, that is the first step for you to start to lose weight. Now, something known as metabolic adaptation will start to occur. So basically what's going to happen is as you start to lose weight, 190 pounds, if I eat 500 calories less, well, 1 week later, I'm going to be 189 pounds, right? And then the week after that, I'm going to be 188 pounds. And 1 week after that, so forth. So eventually I'm going to be 185 pounds. Now, if all things are the exact same, well, guess what? If you're still eating at a 500 calorie deficit, which is 2,500 calories, eventually you're no longer going to be in a 500 calorie deficit. Why? Because your 3,000 maintenance calorie is going to slowly lower because you're losing weight, right? So what's going to happen is over a period of time, it's going to go from 3,000 calories to like 2,900 to 2,800. So what you need to do here in order to maintain that rate of fat loss is you need to drop your calories, okay? That's the first step. We're going to talk about how to build your metabolism and all that stuff later, but the first thing that you really need to do is understand what your caloric maintenance is. All right, so now we're going to go over a few of the myths, okay? So one of the things that I hear all the time is, does spot reduction work? Can you lose fat only in the belly fat? I only want to lose fat only in my belly region. Okay, so the short answer is no, you cannot do that. You cannot just be like, hey, I'm going to do a bunch of sit-ups. I'm going to reduce my belly fat here. It does not work that way. What needs to happen is you can get into a calorie deficit, 500 calories, and your whole body is going to shed fat. Isn't that a good thing anyways? Like your arms get defined, you feel really good. You start to get like a chiseled physique everywhere, but people want to focus on the problem areas first, which makes sense. You just cannot do that. Like there's no exercise, there's no magic potion, there's no brace, there's no like supplement that will be like, hey, if you do this, if you put this thing on and you get really, really cold, you're going to lose a ton of weight there. It does not work that way. So the second thing that I hear is, what's the quickest way to lose fat? Okay, so there's a difference between weight loss and fat loss. Okay, so this is the big difference between fat loss and weight loss is the number on the scale goes down, that's weight loss. But let's just say a big part of that is actually muscle. Now that's not a good thing because going back to the first topic around resting metabolic rate and your metabolism as it slowly lowers and goes through metabolic adaptation, this number you want to keep it as high as possible so that you can be in a bigger calorie deficit to lose more fat. Now, if you start to lose a ton of muscle, what's the issue here is, yes, you're going to lose a lot of weight, but the biggest issue here is your metabolism is literally going to start to slow down because it becomes less effective per se. Metabolic efficiency. If it becomes less effective, from here, you need to be in a bigger calorie deficit, you need to eat less food. And secondly, if you focus on only weight loss, like that's your main target, what's going to happen is, yes, you're going to lose a lot of weight, but because it's not a lot of fat, it's muscle and fat, you start to get this really flabby, not very toned look, even when you lose weight. And that's kind of like where I was. You know, I just focus on dropping a ton of weight as fast as humanly possible so that I can hit a desired number, 170 pounds, and then focus on like whatever it was. So that was like the big goal for me when I first started. I'm going to hit 170 pounds. I'm gonna get there no matter what. So I did a bunch of cardio and I cut all my calories. I didn't have enough protein, I didn't strength train, and guess what? I lost weight, but I look skinny fat. And that's one of the biggest mistakes that we could possibly see for a lot of our clients. So the question is, how do you focus on only losing fat? Can you even do that? Okay, so the short answer is you cannot just be like, all right, I only want to focus on losing fat. But there's a lot of things that you can do to hopefully just only focus on the fat loss component. What are the things that you can do? Number one thing, eat adequate number of protein. 0.8 grams of protein per desired body weight. So that's literally all you need to have. If you go for 1 gram per body weight, that's totally fine too. Just know that there's an upper echelon for the amount of protein that could be absorbed, which is not a bad thing because you're going to feel a lot more fuller eating protein than you will eating carbs or fat. So how else do you only focus on losing fat? It's literally going through a strength training protocol. And there's something known as atrophy, muscle atrophy. Muscle atrophy just means that your muscles get weaker if you don't strength train them. Now, if you go through resistance training, you go through progressive overload, this is going to reduce the amount of muscle wasting or muscle atrophy that's going to occur when you're in a calorie deficit, which is basically when you have less energy for your body. So strength training and eating adequate number of protein, sleeping is a really big one, and probably the most important one, control your caloric intake. Now, one of the biggest mistakes that I see is people go through this really, really freaking aggressive calorie deficit where they're like 2,000 calories in a calorie deficit just having juice. Now, this is a really big issue here because your body's going to go through a really big shocker. It's going to be like going through metabolic adaptation. It's going to go through survival mode. If this drops really quickly, well, guess what? You have to eat way less than when you first started. And this is an issue because it becomes less sustainable. You start to eat 2,500 calories, and after about a month, you drop it to like 2,000 calories. After another month, you're like doing to 1,500 calories and just never ending. That's not where we want to be and not rushing the process. So another thing that I've always heard of is how much cardio should I do to burn fat? The biggest takeaway is you need to be in calorie deficit. And using cardio as a tool to help you to get in calorie deficit is great. It's an amazing thing. So I'll give you an example. Let's just say I'm at 2,500 calories as my intake from my food nutrition. My maintenance calories 3,000 calories. Now, after a period of a month or two, it drops from 3,000 calories to 2,800 calories. Now you can use cardio as a tool. So instead of eating less, you can just do 20 to 30 minutes of cardio per day, which is really nice for your heart health. Now, if you only use cardio as the main tool to help you lose fat, this becomes an issue because instead of just eating 500 calories less, you now have to do an hour and a half of cardio per day to maintain that minus 500 calories. So as your body goes through metabolic adaptation, so instead of now doing an hour and a half of cardio, you're doing like 2 hours plus, and it becomes super unsustainable because you're spending like 3 hours on the treadmill, which I've already done before. So I'm telling you not to do it. All you need to do is just eat 500 calories less. So I'm going to create a whole separate video around all the myths that I see in the health and fitness industry. But for now, we're just going to stay focused on the top ones. So step number 2, once you lose 40 pounds, what do you do next? So from here, if you go through a calorie deficit and all you're focusing on is preserving muscle mass, even if you lost 40 pounds, 20 pounds, whatever it is, you're still going to feel a little skinny fat, because that's exactly how I felt. When I lost a little bit of weight, I felt really skinny. I felt like my arms were really small. I felt like my boobies were like kind of droopy and stuff like that. It didn't really feel that great. So what do? So in this situation, you need to go through a muscle building process. And the reason why you're doing this is for several reasons. Number 1 is you're going to actually give your central nervous system a rest, right? You're going through a calorie deficit. It's pretty taxing on your system. So by going through a calorie surplus, you start to eat more food, you start to feel invigorated, and you're not going to be like eating so much food so that you gain all that weight back and just yo-yo back. You're doing it in a very structured, systematic way. You're going to pack on a ton of muscle, like literally you're going to pack on a ton of muscle, and that's going to fill you out. It's going to fill your shirt out. You're going to feel really good. And more importantly, you're going to maintain that body fat percentage, or you might even decrease body fat percentage, because here's what's going to happen. If you're eating at maintenance calories, you're not losing fat in particular, like the fat cells aren't transforming to like muscle cells. What's actually happening here is you're focusing on building muscle mass. So while you're not taking out all these like fat cells, you're adding more muscle cells, which if you think about like the pockets of muscle, which is kind of like a circle, you're just taking up more space with muscle. And when that happens, it looks like now you're increasing muscle mass, your body fat percentage is going to decrease because there's more muscle mass in that pocket. Hopefully that makes sense. So what are some of the common myths around muscle building? So the first one I kind of touched on: can you turn fat cells to muscle cells? Okay, so fat cells are kind of like pineapples, and then you got pepperoni as like muscle cells, and they're all in a pizza. So when you're going through the first phase, all that's happening is you're plucking off all these pineapples. You're just losing fat, right? Maybe you're building a little bit of muscle, who knows? Okay, but when you're going through the muscle building process, right, you're no longer focusing on plucking all these pineapples because pineapples suck. You're now adding all these like pepperonis, right? You're just adding way more meat onto the pizza. So when you're starting to add more meat to the pizza, you're not converting all these like pineapples and turning them into like pepperonis. Like it doesn't work that way. You're just literally getting more pepperoni and you're just slapping it onto the pizza and it gets bigger. So that's basically how like muscle building works. It's either building up more muscle mass, increasing the amount of pepperonis, or decreasing the amount of pepperonis. Or for fat loss, you're taking out all these pineapples. Or if you're going through a huge calorie surplus, you're binge eating, you're just throwing all these pineapples onto the pizza. Two different things. Two completely separate topics here. So no, you can't turn fat cells to muscle cells. It's different tissue. So number 2, what's the best way to build muscle? Is it going to be high reps? Is it going to be low reps? Is it going to be like heavy weight? What's like the main thing? Okay, so the biggest thing according to literature is consistency and range of motion and progressive overload. So what does this mean? It means that if your intention is to build muscle, which is different to like plyometric training, stuff like that, and your intention is to like literally build as much muscle as humanly possible, your body needs to go over something called time under tension. It means that when you're actually building the muscle, your bicep is getting the stimulus, you're going through the full range of motion here, you contract the tissue, and you do that until you can't do it anymore. That's basically how it works. So if you're pushing yourself to the upper echelon and you're stimulating this tissue here and you're consistent, so guess what? We're going to build muscle. Now, is partial range of motion not very good? For muscle building, it's not the best thing. And the reason why is because you want to put the muscle through full length. Do I still do partial range of motion exercises? Absolutely. The reason why is because once you get away from muscle building and you go into what we're going to talk about, muscle fiber conversion, we're just trying to get as much of that endurance type muscle into the fast twitch muscles. Perhaps there's going to be partial range of motion exercises that's going to amplify the amount of force development for the muscle to actually help you getting super explosive. So that's completely different type of training. Muscle building, you're going to be slow, nice tempo, putting the muscle through the full range of motion and feeling from that muscle contraction. So the third thing that I've heard is protein shakes absolutely necessary for you to build muscle? Like, do you have to take supplements? The short answer is no. Protein shakes are there to support you. It's exactly what the name suggests. It's a supplement. It supplements your current routine. And so how it supplements you is it helps you increase the amount of protein when you're eating throughout the day so that you don't have to like stop and just eat a chicken breast. You can just literally just like have a protein shake on the go while you're on the move, which is super convenient. But it works the exact same way as having chicken breast. It's just a different way to digest your food so that you can hit your macro targets. All right, so those are some of the myths around building muscles. We're going to create a separate video on specifically what are the myths around building muscle so that you can go through it in depth. So step 3, once you build a little bit of muscle, right, eventually you're going to get to your ideal body fat composition. So a few people might need to go from 25% to 15% using this process, and they need to go through this process one more time and another time until they hit 10%. Okay, so once you do hit 10% body fat, what I like to personally do is go through the sustainability route. So once you do hit 10% body fat, the question is, how do you sustain it? So I'm going to show you how I maintain 10 to 12% body fat year round. And I go through these series of mini cuts and mini bulks. Okay. So when I'm traveling, I'm literally about to go to Australia for a trip. I'm going to enjoy life. I'm going to really spend time with my wife. We're going to go try a bunch of food. And so I know that when I'm on these trips, I'm going to go through a slight calorie surplus. So I already know that with me, if I eat 3,000 calories, I'm going to be in a slight calorie deficit. So I restrict myself. I try to hit 3,500 calories when I'm out of town, and I try to stay below that. So the more controlled you are, the less time you have to spend in a calorie deficit, or the less aggressive the cut that you're going to go through when you come back. The big thing is actually creating a strength training program or routine that you absolutely love. So I go through something called a muscle fiber conversion process with a lot of my clients, where if you think about like the top athletes in the world, Usain Bolt, if you compare that to someone that's a bit more fluffy or softer, perhaps these guys have more of like this endurance-based muscle. And so when you're faster twitch and you're just super dense, well, guess what? You're just going to be a fat burning machine. So think about the type of exercises that Usain Bolt would do. He's going to be doing sprints, right? It's going to burn a lot of calories. He's going to be doing box jumps. He's being super explosive. In order for you to maintain that level of training, your body needs to literally have the capacity to withstand that. And in order for you to get to the next level and maintain that level of performance, your body needs a certain level of capacity. And so by training a certain way, if you can't train that way, your body's going to start to adapt. You're going to start to have a training routine specific around that type of training. And eventually you're going to be able to do those things. And so when you're actually training at that level, guess what's the next thing? You need to learn how to recover. If you learn how to recover, this is the process where you don't get injured. And if you don't get injured, you can continue doing the thing that you always want to continue doing. You can also David Goggins it. But what's going to happen here is maybe you're going to have one ankle injury that's going to spread to your knees, to your back, and all these other injuries are going to compound and it's going to put you out. So when these smaller injuries come into play, it's really important to identify why these injuries happen, which we're going to create a separate video on later. Sustainability here comes down to turning into the person that you want to become and having the habits in place, because even at this phase, there's going to be times where you just don't want to train. And the big reason why is because of who you want to become, who you are. It's just ingrained into you. You love the training. You love the process. You want to be able to dunk with your kids. You want to be able to play basketball with your kids. You want to do all these things. And you set yourself a goal and you're hitting these goals. You build the habit. So I really hope that you found this process helpful. I really do. But if you want to learn exactly how our clients lose 25 pounds in 3 months, I actually made a separate video. All you got to do is click it and it's going to take you there. So if you're looking for a bit of direction around what we do, a bit of support, click the link below. You can book a call with me and my team. Have a good day, guys.